Man accused of killing a young mother in Tuscaloosa will spend the rest of his life in prison after being found guilty of capital murder today.
Michael Davis found guilty by a jury for the shooting death of Birmingham's Jamea Harris.
A college basketball star weeps as he's taken to jail, charged with murder.
I love you.
It's raw emotion as the University of Alabama's Darius Miles shouts to his mom.
That's more than you imagine, man. I swear. More than you imagine.
3 men touched the gun that night. One is playing in the NBA right now. Contract worth tens of millions. Never charged. One is serving life without parole. One has been sitting in a county jail cell for over 3 years. No trial, no verdict, no end in sight. The one person who never touched that gun, who never even saw it, is buried in Montgomery, Alabama. She was 23. She had a 5-year-old son, and every single person who was there that night agrees on one thing. She did nothing wrong. This case involves gun violence, the death of a young mother, and a chain of decisions by people who were never supposed to cross her path. If you are not ready to watch, you can leave now. No judgment. For those of you still here, subscribe, tap the notification bell, and drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from. This is Criminal Affairs, and this story is just starting. Montgomery, Alabama is where her story begins, though it's Birmingham most people would come to know as home. She was the youngest child of DeCarla Hurd, and from the time she was old enough to talk, she gave herself a name that would follow her the rest of her life. She called herself Princess Jamea. It wasn't a name anyone gave her. She claimed it herself, the way certain kids just decide who they're going to be. And everyone around her simply agreed. Fashion was her language. Hair, style, presentation. She paid attention to it the way other kids paid attention to cartoons. She talked often about becoming a hairstylist, about building something of her own out of that passion. At 18, her life reorganized itself around someone else. She became a mother to a son named Kanye Johnson, and his father, Cedric Johnson, became her partner in raising him. From that point on, everyone who knew her says the same thing. Every decision she made ran through one question: what was best for her son? She worked nights to provide for him. Even after a full shift, she'd stay awake rather than sleep, just so she could be the one to walk him to school in the morning. The Christmas before she died, she bought him his first bicycle. She ran alongside him down the street while he wobbled on the training wheels, both of them laughing every time he nearly tipped over. Her cousin, Asia Humphrey, was closer to a sister than a cousin. They were only a few months apart in age, and growing up, they used to talk about opening a clothing store together one day. By January 2023, Asia was a student at the University of Alabama, and on Saturday the 14th, Jamea and Cedric made the drive to Tuscaloosa to spend the weekend with her. Before they left, Jamea accidentally FaceTimed her mother. Kanye was in the middle of cheating at Connect 4, refusing to lose the way he always refused to lose. Jamea laughed, talked to him for a moment, told her mother she loved her. Neither of them knew it would be the last time they spoke. That evening, the 3 of them ended up on the Strip, Tuscaloosa's stretch of bars near campus, packed shoulder to shoulder after Alabama's blowout win over LSU earlier that day. They joined the line outside a bar called 1225. They weren't the only ones waiting to get in. Standing further up in that same line was another group entirely. Darius Miles, a reserve forward for the University of Alabama basketball team, had spent that afternoon on the bench in street clothes. Hours earlier, the school had announced he was done for the season, sidelined with an ankle injury he'd been managing since preseason. Beside him was Michael Lynn Davis, a childhood friend visiting from Maryland, someone Miles had known since they were kids. Rounding out the group were two of his teammates, Jaden Bradley and Brandon Miller, the freshman already being talked about as one of the best players in the country. Neither group knew the other existed. At 12:08 in the morning, Miles and Bradley walked through the doors of 1225. 6 minutes later, at 12:14, Jamea, Cedric, and Asia walked through the same doors behind them. For the better part of an hour, both groups occupied the same crowded room. Different corners, different conversations, no acknowledgement, no interaction, nothing that would suggest to anyone watching that these were two sets of lives about to collide. It was just a packed college bar on a Saturday night, the kind of scene playing out in every university town in the country. Around 1:30 in the morning, Jamea and Asia stepped outside and made their way to the Jeep parked on Gray Street, just off the main strip. Cedric stayed behind across the street, waiting on a food order they'd placed before leaving. It should have been a quiet stretch of minutes, waiting on food, waiting to head home. At 1:36, Davis, Miles, and Bradley walked out of 1225 behind them, crossed the street, and started toward the same block where the Jeep was parked. One of them stopped. And what happened in the next few minutes would be argued and re-argued in a courtroom for the next 3 years. Davis stopped at the Jeep. By his own admission to investigators later, he'd had tequila that night, enough of it that his judgment wasn't exactly sharp. He started dancing near the window, close enough that it drew attention inside the vehicle. Cedric had seen enough. He identified himself as Jamea's boyfriend and told Davis to move along. Davis didn't take it well. "You don't know who I am," he said. "You don't know what I do to you." Asia, sitting in the back seat, would later testify to what she heard next. Cedric told him, "Brother, why don't you be good?" Davis fired back, "I don't want your girl." Whether that comment was about Jamea has never been settled, but it's the line that would later shape how this entire case got framed to the public. Miles came back toward the Jeep briefly during the exchange. His attorney would later say he was trying to calm the situation down, trying to get his friend to walk away. Asia testified she didn't hear him say a single word. Then came the moment that would define the next 3 years of legal battles. Investigators say someone inside the Jeep passed something forward to Cedric. Cedric told police it was food. Miles told police what he saw was a gun. Neither side has ever agreed on which one is true, and that disagreement sits at the center of everything that follows. In the days after, DeCarla Hurd spoke publicly about what she believed happened. Her daughter, she said, was killed because she told a stranger no, that she wasn't interested.
I waited till nobody was here and we were alone in the house. And I sat him down and I said, baby, mama's not coming back. She's not coming home. She was hurt really bad. And they weren't able to save her. So mommy's an angel now.
That should have been the end of it. What isn't in dispute by anyone involved, prosecution or defense, is this. Jamea never said a word during any of it. She had no conflict with anyone on that sidewalk. The men walked away. For a moment, it looked over. It wasn't. 2 minutes later, one of them sent a text. At 1:38 in the morning, Miles took out his phone and sent a text to Brandon Miller. He needed him to bring his gun. The reason he gave was one word: fakin'. Slang, according to his own defense team, for someone making threats. What he didn't tell Miller was that the gun was already sitting in his car, tucked inside a hat. Miller arrived at 1:43, pulling up behind Bradley's car on Gray Street. He would later testify under oath that he had no idea the weapon was even in his vehicle, and that nobody had explained to him why he'd been asked to come. He drove over believing he was simply picking up a friend. What happened next was captured on dashcam audio, evidence that would sit untouched by the public for more than 2 years before a jury ever heard it. A voice, "The heat is in the hat." Then Davis, "Is there one in the head?" Then Miles, without hesitation, "You know it is." In the middle of all this, Miles walked his girlfriend, Skylar Essex, and her friend away from Gray Street, guiding them towards safety in a nearby alley. He made sure the person he cared about was out of the way. Then he turned around and walked back toward the cars, passing directly alongside the passenger side of the Jeep. Jamea was sitting right there, feet away from him. He said nothing. He gave her no warning, no reason to think anything was wrong. Meanwhile, the Jeep had circled the block. Cedric was now driving, Jamea still in the passenger seat, Asia in the back. Headlights off, they pulled up and parked directly behind Miller's car. Davis put on a mask. In the span of a few minutes, 3 separate people had touched that weapon. Miles had placed it. Miller had driven it to the scene. Davis now had it in his hands, walking toward the driver's side of a vehicle carrying 2 women who had never spoken a single word to him. Jamea never touched that gun, never saw it, and she was sitting closer to it than anyone. If you're new here, this is the moment to hit subscribe, because what happens in the next 60 seconds is the reason this case made national news. It's 1:45 in the morning. Davis is standing at the window. The first shot went off, and to this day, exactly who fired it first is still disputed. Video reviewed later at trial appears to show Davis falling backward a beat before return fire came from inside the Jeep. Prosecutors would call what happened next a calculated ambush. The defense would call it self-defense. Both sides have never agreed, and the video itself has never fully settled it. Davis was struck twice, non-life-threatening wounds, and instead of retreating, he ran across the street and into the alley behind a nearby parking lot, firing as he moved. 2 of those bullets tore into Brandon Miller's windshield. Miller and his passenger, team manager Cooper Lee, sped off. On the dashcam audio, one of them can be heard saying, "We almost just got killed." Inside the Jeep, a bullet struck the passenger seat. Asia screamed. Jamea didn't move. Cedric floored it, searching for anyone who could help. He found a University of Alabama police officer near the Walk of Champions, just outside Bryant-Denny Stadium. It was 1:45 in the morning. Body camera footage from that officer captured what came next. Cedric, barely able to speak, utterly broken. It was too late. Jamea Harris was pronounced dead. Cause of death, a gunshot wound. Manner, homicide. She was 23 years old. Across town, Miles and Skylar picked up the wounded Davis and drove him back to his apartment complex. Miles called 911 himself, but the story he gave police that night wouldn't hold still. It shifted once, then shifted again. 3 different versions before morning. In Birmingham, DeCarla Hurd couldn't sleep, though she didn't know why. At 7 that morning, there was a knock at her door. She already knew before she opened it. "Don't tell me she's dead," she said. "Don't tell me she's dead." By that afternoon, 2 men were sitting in handcuffs, and the question of exactly who they were was about to become a story the entire country was watching. On January 15th, 2023, Darius Miles and Michael Lynn Davis were arrested and charged with capital murder.
A college basketball star weeps as he's taken to jail, charged with murder.
I love you.
It's raw emotion as the University of Alabama's Darius Miles shouts to his mom.
I love you more than you imagine, man. I swear. I love you.
Under Alabama law, firing into an occupied vehicle is enough to elevate a case to that charge, regardless of who was the intended target. Alabama removed Miles from the basketball roster before the day was over. Video of his arrest went public. Miles in cuffs, emotional, telling his mother through tears that he loved her more than she could imagine. Darius Miles was from Washington, D.C. He'd attended Roosevelt High School before finishing at IMG Academy in Florida, a 3-star recruit who turned down offers from Georgetown, Seton Hall, Rhode Island, and Rutgers to play for Alabama. His mother, Jia Harris, had spent more than 2 decades as a police officer in Washington, D.C. His stepfather, Dwight, had hugged him just hours earlier at dinner and told him, "Have fun, but be safe." According to his family, Miles had started carrying a gun after someone once pulled one on him. Michael Lynn Davis went by Buzz to the people who knew him. He was from Landover, Maryland, and had once dreamed of playing in the NFL. He'd committed to McDaniel College, a Division III school, before COVID shut down his freshman season and effectively ended that path. He worked fast food. He worked construction. He didn't love either. His mother, Annie Davis, hated guns. She'd lost a friend to gun violence years earlier. In 2021, at 19 years old, Davis had been charged in Maryland with 5 misdemeanors, 4 of them tied to illegal possession of a handgun. In 2022, he moved to Tuscaloosa to room with Miles, working event staff at Alabama games to get by. In February, investigator Brandon Culpepper testified that Brandon Miller had delivered the gun to the scene at Miles's request. The story went national within hours. Miller was never charged. Prosecutor Paula Whitley said publicly, there was nothing to charge him with. His attorney insisted he'd never touched the weapon. Alabama let him keep playing. He scored a career-high 41 points days later. He was named SEC Player of the Year. In March, a grand jury declined to indict him. By June, he was drafted 2nd overall by the Charlotte Hornets. DeCarla Hurd called it unimaginable. The university never once called her family. She said publicly, "I'm not going to make the University of Alabama relevant off my daughter's name." Asia Humphrey made a promise of her own. She would sit in every hearing. "I need to speak up for my sister," she said. That October, DeCarla filed a wrongful death lawsuit against all 3 men. Both Miles and Davis remained in jail. No bond, no trial date. And Miles was about to spend the next 2 years fighting to get out and losing. Miles' attorney, Mary Turner, filed for something called self-defense immunity, a legal argument that, if it succeeded, would end the case before it ever reached a jury. Her claim was that Miles had seen a gun pass to Cedric that night, and that everything he did afterward was out of fear for his own life. The hearing to decide it stretched across 3 days in August and September of 2023. It wasn't simple. The defense struggled to get key witnesses into that courtroom, Cedric among them, and the case grew more complicated as time went on. 2 people connected to the investigation died before the matter ever reached trial. One of natural causes before he could even be subpoenaed, another in a motorcycle accident in Birmingham. Neither death changed the direction of the case, but both left gaps in what could be said under oath. In October, Judge Daniel F. Pruitt made his ruling. Immunity denied. The case would move forward. Miles asked for bond 3 separate times, denied each time. His attorneys also tried to get his statements to police thrown out entirely. arguing he'd been questioned without being properly advised of his rights. That motion was denied as well. Then, in March of 2025, more than a year later, the civil side of this case quietly came to an end. The wrongful death lawsuit DeCarla had filed against all three men was settled and dismissed. A trust fund was created for Caney, managed through Advocacy Trust, LLC. The amount was never made public, but the criminal case was still very much alive. Davis's trial was set for May 2025. More than 2 years after that night on Gray Street, the man accused of pulling the trigger would finally stand in front of a jury. The trial began on May 6, 2025, inside the Tuscaloosa County Circuit Court, with Judge Pruitt presiding over the same case he'd overseen since the beginning. Prosecutors Paula Whitley and Kristen Mejia led the state's case. Defense attorney John Robbins represented Davis. The death penalty had already been taken off the table before the trial started. DeCarla was there every single day, sitting through testimony she'd waited more than 2 years to hear. Asia sat beside her. Over 4 days, the state built its case piece by piece. Surveillance footage from the Strip. The dashcam audio, played in open court for the very first time. The public hearing, The Heat is in the Hat and Is There One in the Head for the first time in a courtroom setting rather than a leaked recording. Text messages between Miles and Miller. Body camera footage from the responding officer. The medical examiner, Dr. David Rydzewski, testified to the cause of death, a gunshot wound. He confirmed Jamea's blood alcohol level was .129 and that she had not been driving that night. Cedric took the stand and told the jury what he'd always maintained. Davis was the aggressor. Davis fired first. Then came Brandon Miller, testifying for nearly 90 minutes. He confirmed the dashcam audio was real. He confirmed driving to the scene that night. Under questioning, he confirmed that fakin' was slang for someone making threats, the exact word Miles had used in that text. Jaden Bradley testified next. He'd heard the shots. He never saw who fired them. Then Davis took the stand in his own defense, something rarely seen in a capital murder case. He claimed self-defense, insisting the Jeep had approached with its headlights off. His attorney pointed to the driver's side window, already rolled down, with no bullet damage. Evidence, he argued, that Cedric already had a gun drawn before Davis ever fired. Whitley pushed back hard in her closing. It made no sense, she argued, that a man would stage an ambush with the mother of his own child sitting in the car beside him. Robbins raised one more objection: a backpack found inside the Jeep containing marijuana, baggies, and a scale that the judge had ruled inadmissible. He flagged it as grounds for appeal. The jury asked to rewatch the surveillance footage before reaching a decision. 30 minutes later, they returned, guilty of capital murder. A little over an hour of deliberation. Sentenced to life without parole. Outside the courthouse, DeCarla said she could feel her daughter's presence. Jamea's father put it simply: one down, one more to go.
To Paula in the district attorney's office, everybody who worked on this, Brandon Culpepper with the Violent Crimes Unit, Tuscaloosa Police Department, I want to say thank you. They have made my Mother's Day.
The way he tried to besmirch Jamea's name,
Right.
I felt that was uncalled for. It was extremely insensitive.
Whitley called it partial justice. Robbins confirmed he'd be appealing. Davis was convicted, but the man accused of putting the gun in his hands still hadn't faced a jury. And by the time his trial date arrived, it never happened at all. Today, Michael Lynn Davis is serving his sentence at the William E. Donaldson Correctional Facility in Bessemer, Alabama. Life without the possibility of parole. His appeal is still active, built around the excluded evidence and the judge's rulings during trial, and it remains unresolved. Darius Miles is still sitting in the Tuscaloosa County Jail. No bond. Over 3.5 years now, without ever standing trial. His trial was supposed to begin December 1st, 2025. It never happened. That October, his defense argued Judge Pruitt was biased and should step down from the case. Pruitt denied it. His attorneys then took the matter to the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals, filing what's called a writ of mandamus, asking a higher court to intervene. Pruitt paused everything while that appeal plays out. As of now, the appellate court still hasn't ruled. There is no new trial date. Miles was offered a plea deal at one point and turned it down. He has pleaded not guilty, and he continues to maintain that everything he did that night was in self-defense. Brandon Miller just wrapped up his 3rd season in the NBA with the Charlotte Hornets, averaging just over 20 points a game. He had shoulder surgery in May of 2026. The Hornets exercised his contract option for the following season, worth just over $15 million. His career earnings now sit above $34 million. He was never charged with anything. And Kanye Johnson, the little boy who was 5 years old when his mother died, just turned 7. There's a trust fund now, set up from the civil settlement, sitting there for whenever he's old enough to understand what it represents. He's being raised in Birmingham by his grandmother, DeCarla. The day after he first asked her how his mother died, he wouldn't leave her side. He told her he wanted to protect her in case the bad man came back to hurt her too.
I don't want her story to get lost. I don't want her to get lost as just a name in a newspaper. I want people to know who she was and that she was a good person. She really was. She was a good person and she didn't deserve it.
3 men touched that gun on Grace Street. 3 completely different outcomes followed. One is playing professional basketball. One is behind bars for life. One is still waiting for a trial that hasn't come. And the one person who never touched that gun, who never even saw it, is still in Montgomery, Alabama. Her son is still trying to protect the people she left behind. This is Criminal Affairs. If this case moved you the way it moved us, hit subscribe, because the next story we tell might be the one you never saw coming.